There's one grieving mother. There's one limb missing. There's one face of a child. There's one screaming, lonely child. There's one angry, grieving, probably father carrying one daughter. So we are surrounded by a lot of ones, and I think there is power in that. In my own life, when I was in college, one 4-page mimeographed sheet about the mythology of the Vietnam War, like myth and reality, literally changed my life. I went to college believing we should just bomb Vietnam, get it over with. Why should any of our kids die? That was my attitude. I was naive. This is how I was brought up. I'm sorry. But I got into college, I read this one 4-page mimeograph sheet that turned my life around. And here I am today because of that, really. Because of that one thing that 3 professors did at the University of Wisconsin. And I think probably all of us have had those moments of one person, one event, one insight, one something that helped maybe shift our priorities and maybe even converted us, I don't know. But I've had some other experiences where one person has made a difference. We had Eyes Wide Open in Chicago on Federal Plaza, and it was noontime. It was, you know, how it is at noon in a big city. Everybody's bustling around trying to get to lunch or getting somewhere. And Celeste Zapala, who was a mother who had lost her son, Sherwood Baker, in the war in 2004, got up to the microphone and started speaking about what it was to lose her son. And literally people stopped in the streets. One voice, one woman willing to tell her grief and tell the story of her son. Just stopped people in their tracks. The parable of his life was that he wanted to join the National Guard because he wanted to keep Philadelphia from flooding. And so he wanted to learn how to do that in the National Guard. Well, he was sent over to Iraq. He was told he was supposed to guard the team that was looking for weapons of mass destruction. So here is a man who wanted to help his community, get sent to Iraq to find non-existent weapons of mass destruction in a war that should never have been fought, and he is killed. And so he wasn't available to really help this country be more secure when Katrina hit, and his skills and his body could have been used for sandbagging or to help the victims of Katrina. So I was also in another situation in Columbus, Ohio, with we were at Eyes Wide Open in the Capitol, and there was about 2,000 pairs of boots and hundreds of pairs of shoes to represent the Iraqi victims. And toward the late afternoon, a father came. He had lost a son, and he wanted to see the boots bearing the name of his son. So we were talking, and he said, I'm apolitical, I don't know whether the war is right or wrong, I don't want to get involved. So an Iraqi American who had spoken at a press conference very vehemently against the war in Iraq came over, introduced herself, they shook hands. She had 40 extended family members in Iraq still. After talking for a while, they both said their condolences for each other and said, I hope your families remain safe, because the father still had another son in harm's way in Iraq. So how many, this was one place, one space. How many spaces are there in this country where an Iraqi American against the war and an apolitical father who had lost a son and still had one in harm's way could meet and talk with each other? And I'll never forget what he said when he left. He said, there's one thing you should probably change about this exhibit. You should have more shoes. So in that one encounter, he was able to realize, I think, the loss of the other. And I think that's part of the reason for Windows and Mirrors, to begin in our country to help people understand the loss of the other, and that when we go to war, it's not only a cost of treasure, but a cost of lives, not only of our people, but of others. There was a story, it's told about a woman who, she was part of, in the 1960s, she was part of a group that was trying to stop above-ground nuclear testing. And so there was a scraggly group, and I know I'm in a group that's kind of straggly, because I just talked to about 4 or 5 felons who've been arrested for witnessing against war and violence. And so here was this woman, she was out witnessing against above-ground nuclear testing, trying to get a test ban treaty. There was a few, you know, people, I think probably everybody in this room been on some vigil line where you think, what difference does this make? You know, so they're there, and it's raining, and there's no media, and it's like they leave, and for years she just felt what a waste of time. You know? Until she heard that Dr. Benjamin Spock got involved in the test ban treaty movement when he saw a scraggly band of women standing out in front of the White House in the rain. And he said, you know, if those women care that much about this issue, I better start investigating and getting involved. So I think the point is, and I'm sure a lot of you know this very deeply in your lives, we just never know what our actions mean to others. Those university professors in Wisconsin, it wasn't until 2 years ago that I was able to tell 2 of them, one had already died, that they changed my life. But they went on for most of their lives, never knowing what effect they had had. This woman in front of the White House went for years without knowing the effect. So to me, that's the power of one. And I know a lot of you know this in your hearts and bones because you've been involved in this work for so long. But I think it's good to start remembering what that is. And that we sometimes lose kind of hope that we can make a difference. But I think history has shown where one person, one small group, one initiative can make a difference. There's one mural that is not here, which is one of my favorites. And this was done by a Quaker from Downers Grove. Her name is Lillian Motes. I don't know, can you see it okay? It's an Afghan young girl, and she's caught in the crosshairs. And what I've learned from this exhibit is that the meaning and the beauty is often in the eyes of the beholder. There are some people who can look at this and say, this young woman is about to die. And I think that is a fair interpretation. I would like to interpret it in the way that the trigger hasn't been pulled yet. She's in the crosshairs, but the trigger has not been pulled. And it's up to us to stop that trigger from being pulled. So I talked about the ones on the walls and so forth and some of the stories of the ones, but I think the most important ones are obviously you, your neighbor, me. That we're the ones. And that we have more power than we think. We might not have yet enough power that we need, but we have more power than we think. I'm convinced of that. That has been my mantra over the last 10 years, and the Iraq War would still be going on if you all, and the American Friends Service Committee, and groups like us, did not protest and say no to the war. I am convinced the war would still be going on. And over these 10 years, and I think we have to take credit for it, we have to. Public opinion went from 80% in favor of the war in 2003, after the war started, to 60 to 70% against it today. And that was us. That was us. The power of each individual in this room, the power of the collective, the power of the organizing. So, I hope that both Windows and Mirrors and our own recommitment to not only stopping the Afghan war, but also stopping the path that this country is on to militarism, that our only tool is a hammer, and we are treating every conflict internationally and domestically as a nail. And people are getting hammered in our communities through mass incarceration, through roundup of immigrants, through punishment in the schools and in our prisons, as well as hammering the people of Afghanistan, Iraq, and every other place where we seem to intervene. So we do have more power than we think. And together, we can get the power that we really need. So thank you very much.